As we continue to cover the changing face of American politics, we want to get right to voices who are involved in the decisions being made on Capitol Hill that impact you, Americans. Joining me now is New York Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman. He is in New York. Congressman, thank you so much for joining Scripps News. Let's jump right into it. So last night, President Trump signed another executive order that put independent government agencies under the control of the executive branch. It said in part, quote, "The president and the attorney general are subject to the president's supervision and control, shall provide authoritative interpretations of law for the executive branch." Now, this order primarily affects independent agencies like the FCC, SEC, Federal Trade Commission, that Congress has set up to have some independence. In your estimation, what is wrong with the White House trying to align some of those agencies to Trump's agenda?
Look, this is just the continuation extension of executive power that Donald Trump is trying to implement. The notion that a convicted felon, that someone who's been held liable for defamation, that's been held liable for fraud, should be the ultimate arbiter of what our law is absolutely preposterous. And there's a reason why these agencies were set up by Congress, not by the president or the executive branch, to be independent. And that is because they need to act separate from political will at all times. Donald Trump wants to put every single thing in the executive branch under his thumb so that he can use all of the executive branch agencies for his own personal interests and for his own political retribution. It is absolutely lawless in many different ways, including the fact that it has to come back to Congress in order for it not to be independent. But it's also really dangerous for our democracy that he is on this authoritarian crusade to make the government his own personal fiefdom. And if you are not paying attention to what he's doing, this is just yet another example of going over the line. It's not just pushing the envelope, it is going very clearly over the line.
Congressman, DOJ has been at the forefront of the conversation in Washington and really all over the country in the last few weeks. You have called DOJ reckless by sifting through data at big federal agencies. What do you think is the national security risk here for DOJ to have access to Treasury Department information?
Well, it's pretty clear, right? I mean, let's take a step back for 1 second. We all, members of Congress, or at least I will speak for myself, very much want to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. If we are doing that, however, there's a way to do that. There is no possible way that Elon Musk knows that everything he's canceling and all the people that he's firing are waste, fraud, or abuse. It's just not possible given the timing. He is literally putting keywords in an algorithm and just canceling things. That's not how you establish waste, fraud, and abuse. Certainly he has to come back to Congress. We have the power of the purse. There is the Impeachable Control Act. So everything he's doing is not only lawless and unconstitutional, it really is reckless. It's arbitrary, and there's no possible way that he could establish that this is waste, fraud, and abuse. This is not the way to do it. He's also jeopardizing everyone's personal identification information. And there are multiple different ways that he's doing that. But if you are accessing an official government server at the Treasury Department or the Social Security Administration, which has just about every American's information, and you are accessing it through a private server, you are opening yourself up to hacking from China, from Russia, from Iran, from our enemies, who, if they were able to get this data and this information, could manipulate it and use it to continue to undermine our democracy, perhaps put it into the hands of other bad actors who would use it for identity theft or otherwise. But it would also enable them to get access likely to our communications. which would be easier to do if you have all of our personal identification information. And so this is a very slippery slope. It's like a domino effect because you are making our information less secure, which makes it susceptible to foreign hacking, which makes it susceptible to foreign manipulation, and it makes us all a lot less safe.
I guess the question is, too, though, is have you seen actual evidence yet that those kinds of data points, that information has been leaked to Russia or China? I don't know if we've seen that evidence yet.
No, we haven't seen it. I mean, this is the risk that the way that they are going about this is taking, and you don't have to look any further than the fact that the administrator of the Social Security Administration resigned because he objected to how Elon Musk and his band of teenagers were accessing the personal identification information of Americans. There's a way to do this, and it's quite simple. You don't freeze funding on the front end. If you want to do an evaluation in every agency, good on you, go for it. We should be using technology to do it. We should then be investigating whether the things that are flagged by an algorithm are actually waste, fraud, or abuse. And then they should be making a recommendation to Congress for how we should reduce spending, make government more efficient. We welcome that. But the idea of freezing all the funding, putting so many organizations out of business that are doing critical work, and withholding funding from so many Americans who rely on it, have been promised it and rely on it, is completely backwards. Do the evaluation all you want. Just don't stop it on the front end. Continue with the status quo so that people's lives are not disrupted and turned upside down. And then you can do an evaluation. But the reason they're not doing that is they don't have an interest in actually rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. They just want to arbitrarily cut our government dramatically to pave the way for tax cuts for billionaires, so that are going to come on the backs of the working Americans, of the middle class, who Donald Trump promised to make life better for, and has only increased inflation and made costs go up in his month in office.
Congressman, just for our viewers' knowledge, you are an attorney. You are an assistant U.S. attorney, I believe, at the Southern District in New York. And I want to get you to weigh in on something. In a court filing in the last few hours that the Trump administration has filed, it's indicated that they will refuse to comply with at least one court order having to do with restarting agencies and payments. Where does that kind of decision leave us right now?
Well, this is the first I'm learning of it, but this is the one thing that I probably fear the most. Our system of checks and balances really depends on the separation of powers and co-equal branches of government. The Republicans in Congress have already rolled over and given all of their power, all of our power in Congress, and they're in the majority, so they have all of our power, just given it to the executive branch. The last check is the judiciary. And if Donald Trump is going to disregard court order, and we have no rule of law, and let me just tell you one thing, if we have no rule of law, if court orders cannot be relied upon and cannot be trusted, it doesn't just undermine our government. It undermines every single contract that is entered in this country. And ultimately, it ruins the foundation of our democracy, of our economy, and certainly of our government. And so I'll take a closer look at the filing, but this is I think, preeminent danger right now in Donald Trump's takeover of our government, is if he disregards court orders.
And Congressman, one final question from you. Hopefully you heard this at the beginning of the segment, but President Trump posted on social media and basically called President Zelensky a dictator without elections. What is your reaction to that? What kind of message is that sending to the rest of the world about the United States' support for Ukraine or Russia in this matter?
Honestly, it is shocking, but not surprising. And what I would say is that Donald Trump effectively won the 2016 election because Russia interfered. In 2018, he decided to side with Vladimir Putin over our own intelligence community. He has been a puppet for Vladimir Putin, who is a ruthless dictator who illegally invaded Ukraine through no provocation and certainly not Ukraine's fault. And he is 100% at fault for this bloody, disastrous war, the first intrusion on a democratic country since World War II. And Donald Trump now is continuing to cozy up to a dictator, Vladimir Putin, and jeopardizing the freedom of a democratic country of Ukraine. He is spewing lies. He is undermining our position in the world. He is undermining global democracy. And he is furthering his own dictatorial wishes, his own authoritarian wishes, his own desire to be like Vladimir Putin, who has not had a true election in decades. And so it is absolutely dangerous and really, really problematic.
Does any of that, in your mind, rise to the level of impeachable offenses from President Trump? I know you were a lawyer on the 2019 impeachment trial for him.
Well, look, Donald Trump has, in his first month, probably committed dozens of impeachable offenses. He's violating the Constitution right, left, and center. The reality is the Republicans control the House and they control the Senate. And not only are they in control in the majority, and therefore they would have to lead any kind of impeachment investigation, but they have demonstrated such a lack of spine and will and determination to even just uphold their own power. They're giving away their own authority in Congress and just turning it over to Donald Trump. So regardless of whether or not there are impeachable offenses, it's not happening. And we need to focus on other ways of providing accountability on Donald Trump.
Well, Congressman, we will check back in with you about your work on that then. New York Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman, thank you for your time and your insight.